Hello everyone, welcome back. In today's video, we've got a trade recap video. We're recapping trades that happened the last 2 weeks before the roster freeze on Wednesday last week. So we've got 6 interesting trades to recap here. I'll touch on all of them coming up right now. Hello everyone, welcome back to another video here at the End-to-End Hockey channel. Now before we get straight over to like this video and subscribe down below. Thank you for all of your support. I would never be able to with all of you guys, so if you haven't already, don't forget to hit the subscribe button down below. Don't forget to leave a comment. We're on the road to 1,000 subscribers, and we're going to try and hit at least 675 before the trade deadline. So if you can, definitely hit the subscribe button, and don't forget to stay tuned for videos coming in the very near future. I do first want to apologize. I have been sick over the past couple of days, which is why I haven't been uploading content as per usual. I'm hoping to get back in the swing of things. I'm still a little bit sick, so if I do sound a little bit raspy, I do apologize. I'm getting over it, but I am still a little bit sick, so I am sorry for not posting over the last little bit late last weekend, but I am getting back here today, and today we're going to do a quick recap video. So we did shorts about these trades over the last few weeks, talking about these trades when they broke, but we haven't done an actually in-depth analysis of all of these trades. So we'll start with a small trade that happened back on January 24th, and that was between the Carolina Hurricanes and the Buffalo Sabres. That saw Buffalo get Gavin Bayreuther and the Canes get Victor Nuchev. So it was an interesting 1-for-1 swap. It was more of an AHL level swap. Nuchev was, I think, a 3rd round pick or a 4th round pick in a recent year's draft. He's in the final year of his ELC. He's 22 years old. He's a left winger. He could eventually maybe be like a bottom 6 winger for the Canes. He hasn't had the greatest of seasons at the AHL level, not as good as last year. So maybe in the Carolina Hurricanes organization, he can sort of be rejuvenated. But it's a very interesting pickup here for the Hurricanes to get a decent young prospect who was recently a mid-round draft pick. Well, for the Sabres, they get some defensive additions with Gavin Bayreuther. Bayreuther was a player who played with GM Jarmo Kekalainen in Columbus. He was actually a decent depth defenseman. When Kekalainen was with the Jackets, he's had a couple of stints elsewhere. I think he's played with Dallas. He might play with Seattle as well. So he's had a couple of small stints in a couple of different places. He's not going to be a regular NHL defenseman, but if they run into like a couple of injuries, he could easily be a very serviceable 7-8 defenseman and can play third pair minutes if need be. So this was a very interesting trade. It saved the Sabres a little bit of money and also gave them a little bit more depth on the blue line. Well, for the Canes, they get a young prospect who might be able to eventually blossom into something. So a very interesting trade here. Then we'll go to the trade that happened over on January 26th, and that was between the New York teams, as Palat and Soucy was dealt to the Islanders for a 2026 3rd round pick. So this began the Rangers sell-off of pieces. They started with Soucy. It seemed like Soucy was going to be the first one to go. He's in the final year of his deal, $3.25 million AAV. He was acquired last year, the trade deadline, from the Vancouver Canucks for a 3rd round pick. So it's not something that's a bad deal in my opinion for the Rangers. I think if they got a 3rd round pick plus, they would have easily won the deal. It's a little bit more even if it was just a 3rd round pick, but still, they're at least able to get something back for Soucy, who is a serviceable like 5'6" defenseman, a guy who can play on a 3rd pair. So once again, it's not a bad pickup here for the Rangers and add to their draft capital. Well, for the New York Islanders, they got Palat and Soucy. They've had some 3rd pair defensive problems all season long. They've had some injuries to 3rd pair defensemen. They don't have the greatest 3rd pair on the blue line either. So adding a guy like Soucy really does shore up that blue line. He's not the greatest offensive guy. He's a decent defensive defenseman and a guy who can be a serviceable 3rd pair defenseman. So it was another interesting trade. Rangers got a draft pick to start their sell-off, and the Islanders get some much needed 3rd pair defensive help. So I'm very interested to note there. Then the following day on January 27th, we saw the Islanders once again hook up with a trade with a New York area team, and that was with the New Jersey Devils. As the Devils acquired Maxim Seplikov from the New York Islanders in exchange for Andre Palat and 2026 3rd and 2027 6th round pick. This was a very interesting trade for the Devils. It made a ton of sense. They get a decent bottom 6 forward who was not getting much playing time in New York last year. Seplikov was a pretty decent top 9, hard-hitting forward who actually put up some decent point totals as a rookie, even though he was older than the rookie class. He came over from the KHL the year prior, had a really good season in the KHL, a pretty decent rookie season season, but this year wasn't really able to find his role with the New York Islanders. So he goes to New Jersey. He was actually, I think, number like 13 or 15 on my trade bait list too. So Staplekoff wound up going to the Devils, which wasn't a bad pickup here. Sure, the Devils had to give up a couple of draft picks, but they also were able to free out nearly $4 million in cap space, which was big as part of this deal for the Devils. Or for the Islanders, they got 2 draft picks. They could use them at later dates. They could use them in the draft. It's a 3rd round pick this year and a 6th round pick next year. So all in all, it's not bad value there for the Islanders. They traded their own 3rd round pick for this year, so they get a 3rd round pick back for this year after the Soucy deal. So that's not half bad. And then they also got Andre Palat, who's actually been fitting in quite well since the trade. Already had 3 points in 6 games with the Isles after only having 10 points in 51 games with the Devils. So like Palat's been a really good fit. Sure, he's a little bit more money, but he's a really solid middle 6 forward. With Staplekoff not getting much playing time anyways, getting Palat, who can really help them, made a ton of sense. Sure, he's older, but he's still got this year and next year left on his deal. So it looks like the trade's working out for the Islanders with acquiring Andre Palat. So this is a very interesting trade. It helped the Islanders get some draft capital on a decent middle 6 forward and helped the Devils get some cap space and a younger top 9 forward. So very interesting note there. Then we saw a very small trade happen over on February 2nd, and that was between the Flames and the Stars, just the AHL prospect swap, as Gavin White, 23-year-old defensive prospect in the final year of his ELC, was traded to Calgary for Jeremy Poirier, a 23-year-old defensive prospect, in the final year of his contract. So very interesting note there, like Poirier I think does have the more upside. Both are 23-year-old defensive prospects. Both they could eventually see maybe like 6-7 defensemen, maybe 3rd pair guys, but I do think Poirier has the more higher upside, so I do think Dallas won this deal. But I think both these guys are pretty dang good. I know at one point Poirier was viewed upon as being maybe the best Flames defensive prospect. He's definitely been surpassed, so very interesting note there. We'll see what happens with both of these players, but it was a very interesting AHL defensive swap between the Stars and the Flames, as the Flames got White and the Stars got Poirier. And then we saw the 2 trades happen just before the roster freeze last week. And first one was between St. Louis and New Jersey, as the Devils acquired Bukestad from the Blues in exchange for Bordelot and a conditional 2026 4th round pick. So this is a very interesting deal. The Blues, they started their sell-off. There's a lot of talk about Thomas, about Kyrou, Shen, Falk, potentially Bennington. Like a lot of the Blues players are on the market right now, but Bukestad was one of the ones that wasn't really mentioned a whole bunch. He was in the first year of a 2-year deal, so moving him made a little bit of sense. It wasn't a pure rental. They were able to get a couple of decent things. They got a 4th round pick. It's conditional. The Devils have multiple 2026 4th round picks, so it'll just be the better of them. So the Blues get a 4th round pick that won't be half bad. And for a team that's probably going to go through a rebuilding phase or a retooling phase, adding some more draft pick is nothing to scoff at. And they get Thomas Bordelot, who's a 24-year-old center prospect on a 1-year deal. He was a top prospect with the San Jose Sharks. Didn't really get a whole bunch of playing time in the NHL level. Was dealt last year in the offseason as a prospect swap to New Jersey, and now he got flipped to St. Louis. So who knows? Maybe he can be like a decent bottom 6 forward, especially if the Blues move off a couple of pieces before this year's trade deadline. So we'll have to wait and see how Bordelot does with St. Louis. For the Devils, Bordelot was just acquired in the offseason. It made no sense to keep him. And the 2026 4th round pick, they got a couple of them, so they can use one as an expendable piece. They got Bukestad. He's a pretty dang good 4th line center. He's signed for this year and next year, so even though the Devils don't look like they're going to make the playoffs this year, he could be of use to them for next year too. So this deal does make a little more sense for the Devils, given the fact he's got an extra year left. And like I said, it's not a bad deal. It could be worse for the Devils, especially if he was a rental, but I think it's not too bad for a prospect. They didn't even have last year the trade deadline, and a 4th round pick that's going to be one of 3. I don't think it's a bad deal there for the Devils, so I'll have to wait and see on that. But the Blues to help the Devils get some added forward depth by adding Bukestad. And then the big one just before the break was between the Kings and the Rangers, as the Kings acquired Panarin from the Rangers with 50% of his contract retained in exchange for Liam Greenstreet, a conditional 2026 3rd round pick that has a whole bunch of conditions, which we'll touch on in a second. And then just after this deal happened, Panarin signed a 2-year, $11 million AAV extension with Los Angeles to stay there for this year plus the next 2 seasons. So a very interesting pickup here for both teams. For the Kings, it really does help them adding an elite playmaking winger to a team that doesn't have the greatest offense. It's always a plus. The Kings are still on the outside looking in when it comes to the playoffs, but with the extension in place too, they're going to have him for a couple of years. So this was a beautiful move. He wanted to go to Los Angeles, so the price that they had to give up was actually a steal of a deal. So like from Los Angeles perspective, this is great. Panarin's over a point per game, so if you put him in the top 6 and he can get that offense going, maybe they go on a run, maybe they do make the playoffs. But this is a really good deal there for the Kings. For the Rangers, I know they were upset with the return, but Panarin had no movement clause. He decided where he wanted to go, where he wanted to sign, and the Rangers are really handicapped because of that. They get Greentree, who's in the first year of a 3-year ELC. He's got $945,000 AAV. He's 20 years old. He's a right winger. Looks like he eventually could be a pretty decent power forward type guy. He has that sort of potential. He was a former first-round pick with the Los Angeles Kings. So not a bad pickup here to top prospect. Maybe eventually Greentree could play with a guy like Gabe Perreault. That could be a possibility. So that's not a bad potential lineup pairing down the road. And then they also got 2026 third-round pick. That's conditional. That can turn to a 2026 second-round pick if the Kings win a playoff round this year. And that will turn to a 2026 second and a 2028 fourth-round pick if they win 2 rounds this year. So the third-round pick will upgrade to a second-round pick if they win 1 round, and they'll upgrade to a second-round pick and be added a 4th rounder if they win 2 rounds. So a very interesting trade there. Once again, I think it's a pretty dang good deal for the Kings. I think they really won this deal. I think with the Rangers being handicapped, it wasn't the worst deal in the world, but it could have been better. So very interesting note there. Those were the 6 trades we saw before the roster freeze kicked in. I expect with the roster freeze lifting on, I think it was February 22nd or February 23rd, we're going to see a lot of action the last week of February and the first week of March, leading to March 6th trade deadline, which do not forget to stay tuned for my live stream on March 6th, as I will be live streaming the trade deadline. So definitely don't forget to stay tuned for that. I think it'll be like around 11:30 Mountain Time. So definitely don't forget to stay tuned for that. I can't wait to see you guys all for the live stream trade deadline, but I definitely expect after the roster freeze list to see a flurry of trades. So definitely, I'd love to hear your thoughts on all of that down in the comment section below. That's all I'm going to talk for today. I'd love to hear your thoughts on all of these trades and who you think won down in the comment section below. That's all I'm going to talk for today. Remember to like this video, and for others, remember to subscribe below. Thank you for all of your support. I would never be able to do it without all of you guys. So if you haven't already, don't forget to hit the subscribe button down below. Don't forget to leave a comment. We're on the road to 1,000 subscribers. Don't forget to stay tuned for videos coming out in the very near future. I also do a blog to my news, rumors, analysis, stuff like that. So definitely check that out. I'll link to that in the description below. Can't wait to see you guys all for the next video. See you guys soon.